Do you ever wonder if you're actually living out your purpose in life? Do you sometimes feel like your values are being questioned by that purpose? Or do you even know what your values are? Well, today on Boldly Driven Conversations with Bree, we're going to talk about values versus purpose and how they're interconnected and how we can learn to define our values and find our purpose so that we aren't questioning ourselves so much. So come on and join me. So values and purpose, there is an interconnected relationship between the two, but one has to come before the other in order for there to be forward movement. So values versus our purpose. Like I said, it's interconnected, but they are two distinct different things. Our values are our guided principles. They are our moral compass. They are the internal compass that we have that are rooted in our beliefs, like deeply rooted beliefs that we have that shape the decisions and the actions that we make in life. And they're our foundation. So our values are our foundation. They are the foundation of our character. They are the foundation of our actions and our identity. So that's what our values are. And our values do shift and evolve over time, as does our purpose. Our purpose will also shift and evolve and grow and change and have different iterations. So these are not things that are stagnant and rigid. Like most everything in life, there is a flow to it. And as you grow and change, these values will also grow and change, which means our foundation oftentimes can feel like it's shifting. And that's where we get into those liminal spaces, especially when values shift and change. And it can be very difficult to deal with that. It can be very difficult. So then purpose, we've kind of defined values. So then our purpose is the overarching good or goal that we have for our life. And they are the why we do things and why we exist, like why we do things the way we do them. Because there's a reason for it. And like, it's going to feel very natural. It's going to be the driving force of what motivates us to get up every morning, what motivates us to go and do the things that we do. The purpose is motivation, our why of why we're doing what we're doing in our life. And it is what brings impact. Oftentimes our purpose is where we want to be impactful, rather, I guess, in the world. So it's basically like, what is our legacy? Like, what are the values that we want to have a legacy in the world? You know, what we want to be remembered for, what we want to be known for, the thing that drives us to live. You know, our values aren't what drive us to live. It's our purpose that drives us to live. And our values inform our purpose. Our purpose doesn't inform our values. As our values change and shift and evolve, then our purpose will change, shift, and evolve. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot more I want to say about that, but yeah. Our purpose also is what makes us take action. And our purpose is where we find our goals, and our purpose is where we often find our people. Not necessarily with our values. Our values, we will find people with our values, but oftentimes we will find people first that align with our purpose. And then our values will oftentimes determine if we are going to remain with that purpose and that group of people for that purpose, if that makes sense. Okay. So how do we define our values? Like, how do we figure out what our values are? So how we define our values is we will reflect on our life. We reflect on, oftentimes our values are instilled in us when we are very young, based on what we are taught. But as we become adults, this is why our values oftentimes will shift and change. When we become an adult, what we do, and we don't even realize, is we reflect on our life, and we kind of will allow ourselves to align with the values that we feel make us feel the most fulfilled. So if we're trying to actively figure out what are our values, because maybe we don't know, maybe we're in that space where or our values have shifted and we're like, I don't know what my actual values are and I need to know this. I would say take some time to reflect on your life and ask yourself that question of, when did I feel most fulfilled and proud and happy with myself and with my life, with what was going on, and what qualities of the actions that I take during that time period contributed to that feeling of fulfillment. And that will kind of direct you to what your values, the essence of what your values are founded on. And I think Also, when we're reflecting, something that we need to think about are what are our core beliefs? What principles are guiding our actions? Why do we do what we're doing? Like, why do we want to be kind? Why are we full of hope? Why do we believe what we believe? What are those core values? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about values, is like, what are those core beliefs when we're talking about our values? Why do we believe what we believe? Is it because it was something that was told to us, or is it something we actually believe for ourselves? And then I think the third thing is that think about role models in our life. Like, think about the people who have inspired you, and what actions do they do? Like, what is it about them that inspires you? Is it there's something about their character is what oftentimes inspires us. It's not necessarily what they do. Like, Michael Jordan was an amazing basketball player, right? But is that what really inspires us? Or was it his tenacity and diligence and the amount of work that he did to get to being an amazing basketball player that actually inspires us, right? So we have to look at a little bit deeper than just like the surface of why someone inspires us, that role model. Like, what beautiful characteristics about them inspired us? Not what they did, not the accomplishment, but what about them as their personality was a role model and inspired us. And that kind of can help us to identify some of those values that we think are valuable as being a human being. Once we figure out those values, like we figure out like, oh, I really value honesty, or I really value tenacity. Then we prioritize those values, and we kind of rank them in the order of importance that help us make decisions and help us align how we're going to live our lives. And so once we kind of rank those, then we can see like our top 3 or 4 values. That is our value system. Like, that is the foundation then of how we are going to make our decisions. And when someone asks us, what are your values? Those, first few things are the defining thing that makes you, of why you make the decisions you make, of like the foundation of why you're making your decisions. And then, obviously once we know those values, it's about making a conscious effort to set goals and alignment and living from those values, like making our decisions based on those values. And I think it's really important for us to understand that we need to be very patient when we're going through this process. I'm kind of having a rearrangement of values in my life in the last few years. Like, this has been a big thing for me, where like I'm asking myself, why do I believe what I believe? Is it because I actually believe that thing, or was it taught to me and told to me and reiterated and kind of like, I don't want to say pounded into you, but like, it's just been a theme, like it's been around so much that now you're just like, do I believe it because I actually believe it, or because everybody around me believes it? And I think that's a really important part about values to remember, is that your value system is your value system. Do not be affected by other people's values. Your values are your values. And that's really difficult, because the way we're raised, oftentimes we take on the values of our parents, of our family. And then, as we become adults, we tend to take on the values of the community we surround ourselves with. So we really have to be cognizant of making sure that we are identifying and living from our value system, not somebody else's. And I think when we're thinking about values and defining them, it's really important for us to be very open-minded. We have to make sure that we are not being super rigid in our values. Values are not rigid. Values should be very flexible, and we should be open-minded in the sense of understanding that other people's values are different from ours. And that doesn't make ours more right and theirs wrong, or theirs more right and our wrong. They're just different. Oftentimes there are certain things that just as humans, we all have the same value. And I don't want to get into that, but we do need to be open-minded with ourselves and allow ourselves that permission to evolve and change, and to change our value system. And I think the way we do this is to be more open-minded and to shift and to grow and to evolve, and not be so rigid in this value system to where it hurts other people, is by sharing with others, because this will help us clarify our actual values from our values and like a system's values, or like a culture's values, but our own personal values. It just helps us clarify the difference between cultural values, societal values, and then our own personal individual values. Okay. And then how do we define our purpose? Like, we've talked a lot about the value system, but our values, inform our purpose, right? So that's why it's so important for us to really truly understand our values. But then we also need to define our purpose. So what is purpose then? We've talked about that. It's those overarching goals and goodness, and the overarching of why we exist and why we are living our lives the way we are living them. And so it's understanding in order to find our purpose, in order to define our purpose, I think we have to have an understanding of our passions. We have to have an understanding of our values. We have to understand what is the impact I want to leave on this world? What does I want my legacy to be? And this requires us, again, to have self-reflection. It means that we have to ask ourselves questions like, understand our strengths and our weaknesses. So like, what am I good at? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. What am I naturally good at? What am I, don't have to put so much effort towards? It's just something that I do well, and I enjoy it. Like, what is something that I'm really passionate about? What is it makes me feel fulfilled? Like, is it, talking to other people? Is it helping people? Like, is it like, what makes you feel passionate? What makes you feel, what excites you in the world? What makes you want to get up in the morning and you're like, I want to go do that thing. And like, nothing is going to stop me from doing that thing. And then we also have to ask ourselves, what matters to me most in life? And this comes back on our values of like, what matters to me most in my life? Like, is it making sure that other people are taken care of and loved? And what is it that matters to me? What is it I impact the world with that's based on my values? Because those values are going to inform my purpose. So again, we have to understand that foundation of why we believe what we believe and why we do what we do. So then we have to also consider the impact that we want to leave on the world. So what is our ideal future? Like, you have to ask ourselves, what is it I want the world to be in the future? What is it that I want the world to have or do or be more of, that I can impact because of my passion, because of my values, because of this idea or way that I live my life? Like, what is it that I can impact the world with? What is it I want the world to have that maybe it doesn't have, or maybe it needs more of, or less of? And then what are my unique abilities? What do I understand that maybe other people don't understand? Or what is it that I want to be my legacy, that I want to be known for? When I die, when I am no longer here, what is it I want people to say about me? What is it I want people to know about me and believe about me? So we have to understand that everything that we do is going to be a legacy. And so we get to choose that legacy. And that's really cool. Like, that's part of our purpose. And so we get to choose that. We get to choose that idea. And then I think it's really important for us when we're trying to figure out our purpose, if maybe we don't know our purpose, is to experiment and learn. We have to be able to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations. We have to step out of that comfort zone to be able to identify, is this actually my purpose, or is just this like a cool thing that I want to try to do? And we'll know. There is something inside of us that we will just know if this is actually for us or not. We can feel it. We can know if we've stepped too far and then this really isn't for us. It just is an idea in our head that we think we'd want. It's not really our purpose though. And then we learn from those mistakes, because that helps us align and that helps us get really hyper focused on what our actual purpose truly is when we're trying to figure it out. And then I think something that's really helpful is when we think we have figured out our purpose is to write an actual purpose statement. Write down the statement of what our purpose is in this life. And we can always go back to that and build upon that. It's an example would be to whatever verb we would add in, and then the desired outcome, and how we are going to do that desired outcome. Like, what action or method are we going to take in order to do it? So an example would be to build a better community or a stronger community by teaching skills of how to build community through workshops and being a nice person. I was on the fly. I'm sorry. I haven't had any coffee yet. This is like a purpose statement, and this can be, we write purpose statements for organizations and for businesses, but our own individual purpose statement. And this is not something you need to share with anybody else, which is why I'm not sharing the example of what my life is. My life, purpose statement, I think it's very personal, and we only share that with our very safest people, our people who really know us, because I think that it's something that can be misinterpreted, and it's something that people can try to use against us. So living out our purpose, though, oftentimes is going to put us in situations where we are going to be challenged, and that can be a good thing, and it can also be hard. It can be a very difficult thing. Okay. So then how do we live out our purpose, right? Like, how do we do that? And I think again, it goes back to taking action. It means that we have realistic goals for ourselves. It means that we have a plan. We build a plan towards living out our purpose, and we start small. And I think one of the most important things is we collaborate with other like-minded people, and we move within that group of people towards those who are aligned with some of the same purposes in our life. So how are they interconnected, right? I've kind of hit on this a little bit. So our values are how we live our life, right? Like they're the how, but then our purpose is why we're living our life. So it's two different things. That's how they're very distinct, but then they're very interconnected because, like I said, our values inform our purpose, and our purpose should align with our values. So they're very interconnected in that way. So I have some questions then to know if we are living, how do we know that we're aligned? How do we know that our values are aligned with our purpose and our purpose is aligned with our values? And I think there are 3 questions that we can ask ourselves right off the bat. And these are 3 questions that I ask myself quite often when I'm trying something new, or like, especially with my business, I'm asking myself a lot of times, like, this thing that I'm trying to do, does this align with my values? Does this align with my purpose? And so the 3 questions are do my actions reflect my values? So this thing that I'm doing, this idea that I have, this way I'm living my life, do my actions reflect my values? And if they don't, then 1, we need to look, are my values that I say are my values actually my values? Do I need to reevaluate that? And 2, do I need to then change the purpose, or do I need to change the action to align with those values, to actually live out the purpose? And then the second question then is, does my purpose accurately express my values? So is this purpose, this thing that I'm doing, does this accurately express my values, or is it not expressing who I really am? Is it expressing like maybe the idealized version of me, of who I want to be, but not maybe who I really am? They're not really reflecting my values, or they're reflecting the values of someone else or a system that is not me. They're not my actual personal values. And then the third question is am I compromising my values to live out this purpose? Am I compromising those values in a way that I am compromising myself in order to do this thing that I feel is my purpose? And this has to do with, like, when we're talking about, we know what our purpose is. Okay. So then long-term questions we can ask ourselves, like when we are involved in a project and we're thinking about our future. These are 3 questions that I ask myself when I'm thinking about my future and I'm thinking about the long-term validity of living out this purpose. The first question is will this purpose help me make my life meaningful to me? Will this purpose help me feel like my life is meaningful? Not everybody's perception of whether or not your life is meaningful, but me. Like, does it bring me personal fulfillment of feeling like my life is meaningful? And then the second question is, does this purpose inspire me to be my favorite self? Not my best self, my favorite self. So often we hear that phrase, oh, you're living your best life. You are your best self. Here's the thing, is that our best selves they're going to change. They're going to evolve. And like, what was my best yesterday is not my best today. And what was my best 2 years ago is definitely not my best today. And what my best today is not what my best is going to be tomorrow. That's going to change. But if we can reframe it as our favorite selves, which means we are aligned by our values, our purpose aligned, we are aligned with our values and the moral compass and our purpose, and we feel fulfilled, right? Then we know that we are inspiring our favorite self. So that's what I mean by our favorite self. So does this inspire me to be my favorite self? The one that I am able to face in the mirror every day and know that I'm doing my best, that I'm living out my purpose, and that I am living aligned and in flow. And then the third question for long-term, like future thinking about, does this align with my values and my purpose, is, does this challenge me to grow and evolve? When we're thinking about future, when we're thinking about the thing that we're thinking about doing, does this help me evolve and grow, or is this going to stunt me? Or is this going to make me have some regrets? Okay, so those are, some questions that we can ask ourselves to help us know if we are actually living out our values and our purpose, and know if they're interconnected, or if we need to make an adjustment to our purpose, or if we need to reevaluate, are these really my values, or are these values of a system or a culture or a community? And because we should be making our decisions and our choices in life based on our own personal values, not anybody else's, not a systems, not an organizations, not a communities, not a cultures. So it's challenging, but I think once we start getting this is when we really start to see our life flowing. I know that has been the case for me as I have really reevaluated some of my values and my purpose. I find myself more aligned and I find myself more in agreement with myself. And I feel like I'm finding my favorite self. I'm living my life by who I want to be. And it looks strange to people sometimes when you make some of these changes, and you're gonna find yourself in liminal spaces. You're gonna find yourself being challenged by people. And that's good, because this makes us understand our values more and see whether or not we need to shift or change and grow and evolve, because we always should be growing and evolving. Okay, so your bold challenge today is I want you to ask yourself at least those first 3 questions. The first 3 questions is do my actions reflect my values and purpose? And am I compromising my values for my purpose? And does my purpose express my values? So those 3 questions are the 3 questions I want you to ask yourself about your purpose and your values today. If you feel like you're good with those 3, then ask yourself the next 3, which were, will my purpose help me be my favorite self? Does this purpose, my values, my purpose, is it going to help me be my favorite self in the future? And does this purpose inspire me to be my favorite self? And does this challenge me to grow and evolve? Okay, have a wonderful day and keep growing.